Hi everyone, welcome to San Antonio Startup Week. My name is Megan Daly and I represent Tint, a company that is all about empowering businesses to utilize user-generated content across all their marketing channels, headquartered right here in San Antonio, Texas. Today, I will be leading our media panel, and I am honored to be joined by four amazing San Antonio journalists who spent time with me and chatted about the ever-changing media landscape, especially in the last 6 months. And we dive a little bit into how their daily lives have changed and how their work has changed as well. And we also get into how you as a startup and an entrepreneur can build relationships and utilize the media and those relationships that you build with them to grow your business. So lots of great info in these conversations. So pull up a seat, grab some coffee, and dive into this. It's going to be a really great conversation. And as always, please join in on the conversation online and use hashtag SASW2020. So here we go.
My name is Lindsey Carnett. I'm the technology and business reporter for the San Antonio Report, formerly known as the Rivard Report. We recently underwent a name change. And I get to report on all the different technologies that are coming out here in San Antonio, how they're affecting local businesses, how local businesses are adapting by using technology, and get to really dive deep into the digital divide, which is a really big issue here in San Antonio, with 1/4 of our city being unable to get access to the internet. So that's been a really big topic that I've also gotten to cover a lot.
Well, thanks for inviting me to this panel. I co-launched the San Antonio HERON 2 years ago, June of 2018, and the whole concept behind it was to really focus in on downtown development and growth and the impact on the nearby neighborhoods. So looking at downtown development, historic preservation, gentrification, all those kind of issues, because San Antonio is a growing city, and I think everybody wants it to grow. But I think it's like how you manage that growth, which is kind of what we're trying to focus in on. So, and before that, I worked at the Express News newspaper for a very, very long time, almost 20 years. And then I also dabbled in other, after that, I left the paper in 2016. I had been writing about downtown stuff there too. And I left the paper in 2016 and dabbled in a few startups. I had my own before the HERON, and then I helped out with another one called Follow Media, and then eventually I felt it was time to kind of go on my own.
So I'm Jeannette Garcia. I am the tech, military and defense, and workforce development, economic development, definitely focused towards workforce development, reporter for the San Antonio Business Journal. So the San Antonio Business Journal is definitely focused on everything business, of course. So we do business news reporting. And yeah, those are the beats that I cover specifically.
Okay, so I'm Charlotte Ann Lucas. I lead NOWCASTSA, which is San Antonio's trustworthy, independent, nonpartisan news organization. We're sort of like a local C-SPAN or public television on the internet. And our nonprofit mission is to promote and facilitate an inclusive civic conversation, basically civic engagement. We've been located in Central Library since 2010 because Library Director Ramiro Salazar says we are in the same business of empowering people with information. And we pay our rent by live streaming events at the library, which is why we have a YouTube playlist of Poets Laureate and an archive of the Mayor's Summer Reading Program going back to when Karina Castro was just learning to walk. We're focused on local news and information, but on some national issues like immigration, that's right up close and personal to people in San Antonio. So we do local and national issues depending on what people are looking for. But also, I have to say, our #1 most popular piece of content in of all time is our early voting polling place map that we have done since 2012. And that has helped people find places to vote. And it has actually helped 185,000 people find a place to vote. So I'm taking credit for getting all of them out to vote.
One of the big things right now, obviously we're doing this via Zoom. And that's basically the way life has been. If it's not a Zoom call, it's a Microsoft Teams call, or just a general phone call in general that we're talking to people with. We got general direction around July from our national publication. So San Antonio Business Journal is owned by the American City Business Journal, which is in North Carolina, Charlotte, North Carolina, and they pretty much told us we aren't allowed to see people face to face. So everything pretty much has been, since about July, has been through Zoom and just digital, which changes a lot of things, because normally, for example, if someone has a press conference in person, we would actually be there, or just events in general, we would be there. Now it's seeing everything through Zoom, or also just receiving our pitches digitally. So I'm receiving a lot more emails, and I welcome those. Please, if you do have an interesting startup or you did get some sort of funding, please contact me, because right now it's definitely a lot harder to find our stories, just because we aren't able to do that in-person networking that we used to do before. And as a matter of fact, I mean, like I said, we're on Zoom, so this background definitely is not my normal mode of operation. I usually work in my bed. As a matter of fact, I'm in my bed right now.
Yeah, that's a lot of people's stories, and figuring out how to have little work from home stations.
The obvious that everyone's going through is, obviously we're working remotely, we're working from home. We were operating out of Geekdom, and so I went there, and a few of the freelancers that I work with would go there sometimes as well. And that was sort of our home base. And I realize they're back open, but I've kind of gotten into this groove of just working from home. So, and actually surprisingly being very productive, because I'm not usually a work from home guy. But now that things are opening back up, I'm kind of starting to get back into my usual routine. But what's good is that the stuff that we write about a lot of meetings and commissions and council meetings and stuff, and all those are remote. They're teleconference, so or video conference. So it actually, in a lot of ways, has made our job easier in terms of producing the stories. Because now, instead of having to drive out to a meeting, covering it, finding a place to write it, that kind of thing, it's all done in one place, which is kind of cool. But from a business standpoint, even though we're a nonprofit, I mean, from a business standpoint, our sponsorships have gone down, and we're not, and obviously we can't hold live events, which is a great way to generate membership contributions and get people on an email list. So, we haven't quite figured out how to adjust to that yet, although, we just got a couple of sponsorships recently, so that it feels like it's kind of on the uptick a little bit. So we're encouraged about that. But that is something that we're trying to figure out how to adjust for, is how do we kind of get back to the level we were at in terms of sponsorships and new members and that kind of thing.
But two different things. I mean, obviously, I haven't been at Central Library since March, because the public is not allowed in Central Library, and there is really no point to go to Central Library. So I've been working from my home office. and our interns are working from their home offices. And so last summer I had one intern from UTEP, University of Texas, El Paso, and another intern from UTSA. And both of them might as well have been down the street or on the other side of the state. It didn't matter because we only saw each other, you know, in Google Meets in morning meetings. So, I mean, that was terrific. They said to me at UTEP, would you mind having a remote intern? And I'm like, isn't everybody? So it was lovely. That part of it was lovely. I have had this home office since I went to work for TheStreet.com as their managing editor in 1999 when I left the Express News. And so for me, it's coming back to a kind of a safe space. But the difference between now and then was then I used to leave the office by going to like Central Market to go, you know, break, and now we couldn't do that. So the difficulties for all of us face who are trying to work from home is that the boundaries between our home life and our work life or between our home work, whatever it is, I mean, those boundaries are very, very difficult. For the media landscape, the interesting thing is that many of us in news organizations did not see an increase in revenue. In fact, saw some decreases in revenue, but at the same time, we saw a huge increase in demand. So people needed information and desperately needed information. And that's part of what we, you know, had to ramp up to do was provide information. One example that's just huge. I was fortunate to have a summer intern who was a computer science genius as well, UTSA, who graduated into this hot mess, and I kept him on over the summer. And as soon as the schools closed in March, I freaked out because I know that in San Antonio School District, for instance, 94% of the kids are eligible for free lunch. And so closing schools meant that it was going to create incredible food insecurity for all of these children. And so I said to my student, you need to help me because the schools are going to start giving out lunches in the neighborhoods and stuff. And so we need to do a map. And he started doing the map, not realizing that by the time we were done, we would be locating on that map 319 different places where schools were distributing food for kids in all across 19 different school districts. So we went through 3 different iterations of that map and finally came up with a map that was like super mobile friendly and can be sorted by school district and stuff like that. But I mean, the need for that, and it's been used by thousands and thousands of kids and families, and my media partners at Broadcast and other news publications were kind enough to also publish that map to try to get that information out to people. So the need really increased, the revenues did not really increase. So
wow, that's really fascinating, and what an incredible thing that y'all were able to build and so quickly. So kudos to that. That's incredible.
Well, it's interesting because I've been at the San Antonio Report for going on 9 months now, but I'd only been in the office for about 8 weeks before the pandemic changed everything. So we were working in our downtown office right next to Sunset Station, seeing each other's faces every day, kind of bouncing ideas off each other. And then that day that it hit, I remember we all thought we'd be back in a couple weeks, and I kind of laugh about that now. I even left my Apple Watch on my desk because I was like, I'll get it when I come back. Yeah, so a few months later, we're still working from home, but it's been really interesting. We do Zoom calls every morning now just to make sure that everybody on the team is on the same page. But a lot of our work has been from home and doing a lot of calls and Zoom calls, especially because as a reporter, your job is to build relationships with people and to just go have conversations basically. And a lot of times when you're a reporter, you do that over coffee or lunch or dinner, and you can't really do it when there's a pandemic going on that way. So it got a little bit more formal, but it's been really good. And actually, we've had a chance to kind of pin down some people that, you know, normally wouldn't be easy to pin down just because they're normally running around, but now they have 5 minutes at home between their 10 meetings. So it's been kind of cool in that regard.
That's really interesting. Important follow-up question. Have you gotten your Apple Watch from your desk?
I did. I went and got it. Unfortunately, the charge isn't holding, so I have to figure out what's going on there. But yeah.
Oh, it's always something, right?
well, you know, we've all had to like kind of we felt kind of buffeted around, but one of the things to do to re-engage with the media, I think that's really, really important. I, all of us have heard a bazillion times this year the abuse that media has taken from the White House and other places, and so to re-engage with the media, just like saying something nice would be really great. Any little affirmation for the media, because I mean technically speaking, you are the media as well. I mean, you have a Facebook page and you have a social media and you publish information. I mean, we are all the media. We, you know, all of us are the media. But for those of us who run news organizations, it's been, at least on a national level, a really difficult year as we see the kinds of things that have happened to journalists and the attacks on journalists. So just saying something nice and appreciative of the things that we're doing, particularly local journalism. I mean, we're here, we're helping people, you know, I mean, there's no question about that. We're helping people. So to re-engage with us is to just like kind of listen to what we're up to and then say, hey, you know, I see what you're doing, and you get a really great response from me.
That's very practical and good advice. It all starts with building relationships and being human. So I think that's really wonderful advice.
First things first, we're always happy to hear from people from the community. So as reporters, it's our job to come up with a lot of our own story ideas and content. So when someone from a business reaches out to us and says, hey, I am doing this really cool thing, or I have this really cool product, it makes our lives easier as well as yours. So that's always step one. Is just don't be afraid to reach out to us via email, via text, via phone. And most of our emails are usually listed, at least for San Antonio Reporter, our emails are all listed on our website under our About Me. So yeah, anytime anyone that wants to talk with us wants to reach out, they can get our email from there. Another tip that I would give for speaking with media is not to be afraid to do follow-ups and remind them, just because our days are really crazy, honestly, juggling so many different things going on, whether it be interviews or writing or going to an event or whatever it looks like. Sometimes we just forget to reply. We'll read something and just forget to reply. So don't be afraid to follow up and just say, hey, did you get that? Or if they ask you, like, you know, what's different or unique about your product or your story, make sure to kind of have an answer to that, because making sure that you're quote unquote newsworthy really just depends on standing out and being unique. So if you are able to phrase it in a way that will grab their interest by making it sound unique, they'll be more likely to want to actually follow up with you. And also, don't be afraid to have more than one idea. So say you pitch, oh, we're coming out with this new product, and they say, that's cool, this isn't really a story for us. Don't be afraid to reach back out to them in the future if something else cool or interesting comes up. Sometimes we have to say no, and our editors really have that overall say. So sometimes we want to say yes, but we have to say no. And if you give us another reason to be able to say yes, then we're more likely to want to work with you in the future.
I think what they should do is sort of pay attention to what that media outlet is, how they have maybe shifted during the pandemic, and really do their homework, because some, like the big media organizations, you know, they're able to kind of write about multiple things at once, but the small ones like us, we've really had to focus in aspects of the pandemic. So for us, it's housing assistance, like, you know, this whole concept of the city of San Antonio coming in and helping people pay their rent during the pandemic, and also evictions. And so anything that kind of touches on that, you know, we love to get more information on those types of stories. But I would just say maybe do your homework on each individual, you know, news organization. Like what have they written lately? where do they seem to be focusing in on during the pandemic? And everyone's different.
Definitely reach out to me. My email, it's jegarcia@bizjournals.com. But some of the pitches, even before pandemic times, that usually would get picked up by my publication specifically, like I said, are those that have some sort of funding, or even if you're just starting up, tell me something interesting. The thing that does get a little nuanced and a little, I mean, obviously startups are really excited about their products, but one thing that won't usually get picked up are product updates and those kind of things. So I would caution entrepreneurs and startups to, yes, I know it's a great big deal for you to have this new product update, but unless it's something that's tied with sort of funding or being able to hire someone or naming like a chief technology officer or some sort of C-level executive, then more than likely we're not going to cover it. So just focus on those kind of big picture items. So like I said, if you are hiring people, even if it's one person, but it is like a strategic high level person, I want to know about it. And then that could be a way to tell the rest of the story, but the main story is, for me, saying that you're adding on to your C-suite.
That's a good question. I think I would just say this, is that I think that, you know, as a media person, I know what's going on, you know, and I think that sometimes maybe companies or people who work for companies to do that sort of thing might think, oh, well, they may not want this, or maybe this isn't for them. They don't really cover this topic. And I would just say that, you know, at least for me, just send it anyway, you know. If it gets to the point of it being spam, I will let you know, you know. But I'd rather know what's going on, so I can make a decision as to whether it's something we should cover or not, than not know that. That's my personal opinion. I'm sure other news organizations might have different opinions, but that's just mine. Like I always want to know, even if I can't write it that day, I may put it in a folder and save it for another time.
You know, one of the things that I think it's really easy to misunderstand, and you know, I've been in this business since there were manual typewriters in newsrooms. Okay, my first newsroom, I didn't have seniority to use the electric typewriter, so I mean, I'm a bit of a veteran of this industry. And one thing is that people think that the media does things very, very purposefully, and if you understood what a miracle it is that a newspaper is actually published every day, or that our website like does not collapse and stuff like that, people would know that there is no capacity in the media for media conspiracies. But the other thing that is perhaps you don't see it, and people don't necessarily understand it. When I was last century, I was business editor at the Express News, and when I left, there were 250 editorial employees at the Express News. Today, there are fewer than 100. And so the absence of resources is something that you can't see from the outside of the building, unless you kind of remember, oh yeah, they did try to put that building up for sale. But seriously, the absence of resources. Right now, I'm sort of between interns, and I had 3 interns during the summer. I have like 1 part-time intern now. I expect to get some more, but things are moving slowly. We're moving at COVID pace, I guess. So I expect that I will have, by the end of the semester, perhaps 5 interns. Right now I've got 1. And so my ability to respond to when somebody even comes to me with a really legitimate story idea is really, really limited. So understand that I don't have resources to spare.
A lot of times when I do get pitches from startups, or even like PR people who are reaching out on behalf of startups, they tell me just about the product, and I'm like, or product updates, and I'm like, that's cool, congratulations, but for my publication, we're, like I said, we're very much focused on like numbers. So if you're able to give me revenue numbers, which I know a lot of people are very hesitant to give, if you're able to give me like a percentage of how much you're growing as well, that's something that would definitely help me out and would help, because I mean, I can tell the story, but at the end of the day, my editors are also a big part of what actually gets published. So I get the story, I have to pitch it to my editors, and if I write the story, there are times when my editors come back to me and they're like, well, what are their revenue numbers, or how many employees do they have? So any numbers that you can give to us, that's definitely a lot. It helps us out to actually get your story out, because even if we do interview you, there may be a possibility that the story may never run just because we don't have those numbers.
That makes sense. It's also a point of, and a theme that I'm hearing a lot is know the publication that you're pitching to and what they cover and how they cover it.
That's a great question. I'd say really pegging your product or story to something that is newsworthy, quote unquote, that is happening in the world, makes it more likely that we'll want to write about it. So if you are doing something different or unique because of COVID, and you did change your business model because of COVID, we would love to hear about how you changed what you're doing to survive or to thrive. So yeah, that's something that we definitely want to hear if it is able to be pegged back to something modern or happening day to day, especially if it's COVID or the election, just because those are such big topics today. So yeah, if you're able to pin it to one of those, please do so. Even if you don't have like a solid way to do that, just kind of think outside the box a little bit with your team and say, hey, how have we changed since COVID? And I don't think anyone really has a non-answer to that. I think COVID's changed how we all do work in business. So I think if you buckle down and think about it hard enough, it'll definitely come to you to find that peg to pitch to the reporter.
But you know, I would say do it with some strategy. You know, I think like the same pitch doesn't work for every news organization. I mean, some may, but you definitely want to maybe tailor, you know, your pitch to that organization. Like, for example, we at the HERON, we don't do a lot of daily stories. That's not really our thing. We don't have the capacity to do that. We're not like the Express News or other organizations that have like $1 million budgets. We have a tiny budget. So we do more deep dive, in-depth type stories. And so that's something that somebody should consider if they're pitching us something. But in terms of like what's going on in the world currently, I mean, yeah. I mean, obviously, you know, any fresh angle that has to do with COVID or the elections is always appreciated.
So any success stories that you receive, I want to hear about it. It definitely does help if your startup or something along the line does help or provide some sort of solution to what to helping solve some of the challenges that have come out of the pandemic as well. Recently, I've reported on some startups that are doing UV disinfection, and they're pretty much companies that were started off to begin with as a different sort of industry. I believe one of them was into actually manufacturing like nuts and bolts, and now they've diversified to also include UV disinfection cleaning services. So if you are pivoting in any way, that's something that we definitely want to hear. If you are pivoting in any way caused by the pandemic, that's something that we definitely want to hear.
the same answer that startups, all startups like need to realize when you're pitching your business concept, right? That I, as a person who's trying to hang a picture on the wall, I don't need to know all the details of the drill. I just need to know if it will make a hole in the wall, right? So I need to know how you're going to solve a problem. That's really the deal, right? And it's as simple as that. So we started because we started a special section called The Helpers, which is based on the Mr. Rogers line from his book that said, you know, my mother always told me when I see scary things in the news to look for the helpers because there will always be helpers. And so we started a special section on that because there were so many people who came out and started making masks and started doing this and started doing other things to help each other, because that's what San Antonio is, right? So when you're pitching me about something about your business, think about how you're solving our collective problem as a community, right? How is your business helping to solve our collective problem in its own little way? Because, I mean, you didn't start a business just because you wanted to go make money. You started a business because you thought you had a solution to a problem. So tell me how your business is helping solve our overall problem. And then you're telling me how, oh yes, I do want to put this story about this on our website because it's helping the community understand where they can get blank, or how they can do this, or how they can better whatever. So think of it as not telling me how many speeds your drill has, but that it makes exactly the right kind of hole in the wall.
I love that analogy. That's fantastic.
It goes back to the whole thing that you mentioned, where you do need to focus in. So try to figure out in whatever market you're in. I mean, obviously here in San Antonio, but if this is digital, so maybe other people from different markets are watching, definitely find out the major publications within your specific city, and then really research what the person's beat is. So if you're a technology-based company, obviously you're going to want to try to reach out to me here in San Antonio, or to Lindsey, or even to Paul over at TPR. But if you're focused on energy or manufacturing, you might want to reach out to the manufacturing or energy reporter, which in the Business Journal, that's Jessica Corso. Or if you're if you're focused into tourism or something like that, that would be Scott Bailey. Or real estate, you'd probably have a better chance at reaching out to Mitchell Pardon at the Business Journal. So definitely just know the beats of the people that you are specifically trying to target. And if you are a company that's based, so also do it, target the people that are closest to you. So for me, it would be a San Antonio-based company, or someone that is in the surrounding areas like Converse, Live Oak, even all the way down to South Texas. But one of the things that I've noticed lately a lot, I get a lot of pitches from Austin startups. Unfortunately, we have a Austin Business Journal. So I can't write about an Austin startup because that would fall under the purview of our Austin sister paper. So definitely just reach out to whatever publication is also closest to you and get to know the beats of the journalist that you want to write, about you.
Yeah, it sounds a lot. What I'm hearing is have the patience to do the research, to be effective in finding the right person, and don't rush to just throw out pitches to feel like you're throwing out pitches, and really look to make those relationships and give people what they really need to write the story and what makes sense for their beat. So beautiful, practical advice for sure.
Oh, for sure. And then don't be afraid to also reach out via social media. Sometimes, like I said, you can email me, but sometimes if you tweet at me, or even like try to connect with me via LinkedIn, I might see the pitch faster. Admittedly, I'm really bad at checking my LinkedIn messages, so maybe Twitter would be best. but try to also just connect with us that way, because sometimes more and more we are getting pitches and finding stories on social media.
Check out what people are, what different media organizations are saying in their social media. Subscribe to my newsletter. See what kinds of things that we highlight in our newsletter. And then you can, when you make your pitch to me, or when you make your pitch, you can do it with a lot more sensitivity to, I think this really is the kind of story you'd be interested in. And you're saying that because I saw this story that you did on such and such, and that made me think this. So pay attention to that. Whenever, I mean, media people, we also have egos, you know. So if you like saw my newsletter and said, oh gee whiz, I really liked that piece you did, I mean, that's like, you've got my attention now, you know. And that works with everybody, but it doesn't work when you say, hey, I want to do this piece for you, and it's like totally not anything that we would ever touch, and it shows that you've never even looked at my website. And the other thing, please, 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 if you have some big event and you're like wanting to get publicity for it, please don't wait until the night before or hours before to let me know, because, and I know you're like, oh, last minute, but once you pick the date, even if it's 3 weeks out, give me a heads up, you know, and say, save the date, we're going to do this. It's okay. We won't publish it, but I'll make sure that like my intern who only works on Tuesday and Thursday that week works on a Friday so that we can cover it, you know? So
that is such perfect advice, and something that happens way too often. So
it does. Yes.
it does.
I would say the thing that I look for is, you know, thoroughness and like a detail-oriented pitch, you know, like I appreciate it when I get an email or a pitch or a press release that tells me everything I need to know, you know, time, date, place, this is the site, how much are tickets, you know, whatever I need to know. In other words, what I like are pitches that are so complete that I actually don't have to call them, you know. And now I may call them, you know, I probably end up calling them anyway, just because there's always something, hey, you know, I want to know this or that or whatever. But that to me is the best way to build a relationship, you know. And I think you should definitely ask for a face-to-face meeting and get to know them. I mean, I think that is definitely something that they should try to do. But I would just say, just know that journalists nowadays are so spread thin. I mean, we're all spread thin, but journalists in particular are so spread thin because it's the industry is getting hit right now, and so they may not have time to do that. I would say don't take it personally. They just maybe don't have time. Maybe they could take a call, you know. But to me, it's just really focused in on a thorough, complete, detailed pitch.
And if you are an entrepreneur starting a new business, having a mentor to kind of guide you through the waters and connect you with any sources they may already have is a great way. Reaching out and just asking for a cup of coffee with the reporter is always good. I always say yes to anyone that wants to meet for coffee. Or just for a 10-minute conversation to get to know a little bit more about us and about our work. But yeah, I think it just starts with not being afraid to reach out. And I know you might think like, oh, it's a reporter, it's so official, whatever, but we're looking for stories. So by just reaching out to us and making that connection, you are building your media strategy. First and foremost. And then second, having that mentorship, I think, to really help practice what you should say before you say it, and all of that is also a really good way to go about that, just because a good reporter will work with you to kind of tell you like, hey, this is what the story will be about, or what I'm thinking we could go with on this, but they don't always do that. And sometimes I think sometimes some people don't really know what they're supposed to say or know what's correct, I should say. So having a mentorship with somebody who's kind of walked those lines is always very helpful.
For us, it's mostly housing and the pandemic impacting people's lives in terms of the housing, rents, mortgages, basic cost of living type things like, can I pay my electricity bill and that kind of thing. Also evictions, there's a lot of talk about, as the pandemic continues, are people going to be able to pay their rent? And what are governments doing to help them kind of stay in their homes? So those are big issues for us. And then also just development in general, what's happening, what's being built, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, any kind of human interest stories, we are always excited to write about at the San Antonio Report, whether it be, a professional cuddler or whatever it be. We've done, stories on different types of people here in San Antonio. What makes this story good is the human aspect of it. So if you've done something that helps other people and have someone that would be willing to discuss it with us, like, hey, my product helped this person that's homeless find where they can, go find a shelter, anything like that, that kind of connects to the human element, that we can actually talk with another human being that's benefited from your product or from your business. We love to hear, especially with how community oriented San Antonio is. We want to be able to share those stories and tell people like, hey, these people live in your community and this is what they're facing and going through. And here's how you can help, whether it be helping this business out or helping this person out or whatever. So anytime you find a story interesting, like just from your friend, keep it in the back of your mind that, hey, this is something that, I could pitch as a story to a reporter, because people like to read about other people. They like to connect to other people. And a good reporter is able to really nail that down, that human element. So that's something that we're always looking for at the San Antonio Report.
One of the things that we started, sadly, in the spring, and I knew we had to do it, was to start a new obituary section to give testimonials to a lot of the people who are, who are normal mortals, who were people who were the employees in assisted living places, who were people who are not famous and who became victims of this disease. And so I'm still looking for more tributes. And I'm interested in people helping us pay tribute to the ones we've lost. And so that obituary section I'm really interested in. And I'm interested in anybody helping us with that. That's not something that you have to be an accredited freelance journalist to do. I really, really think it's important to give credit to those people. And obviously we're heading into a time of the year when, for nonprofits, and I am a nonprofit, it's the biggest fundraising time of the year is the last couple of months of the year, and it's a particularly important year for us to try to raise funds, because here we've just finished, or hopefully we'll finish very soon with this election. But fundraising for things like we did yesterday, a candidate forum of judicial candidates, 23 judicial candidates. Those are not easy things for us to sell sponsorships for, and so we end up seeking donations in the end of the year that helps. I mean, we didn't have any sponsorship for that map of food sites either. So we're looking for people to say thank you for what you did during this year, and that's the biggest thing for us as the end of the year comes around. And also figuring out how all of
What is next? So we have a couple of cover stories that are coming up pretty soon. One of them will be on Rackspace. The next one will be our Veterans Day story. So those are the next two big things that'll be happening. Of course, since we are a weekly but also covered daily online news stories, any sort of like new pitches that you all actually provide to us could potentially be what's next for me.
That's exciting.
Well, we're going to keep going to keep trying to grow the Heron. Obviously, we have a team of about a dozen people when you combine our board and some volunteers and some actual freelancers. And so I feel like we're in a really good place right now, heading into the end of 2020. The editorial content side has never really been an issue for us because I brought that, I came with that, to the organization. I brought that to the organization, but the business side is something that we've had to figure out. And I feel like we're finally figuring it out. And I'm really optimistic as we go into 2021 that we're going to be around for, a few more years at least. So, yeah.
Well, y'all do great work. So,
oh my, right now, what I want to do is help people feel like their vote counts, that they're able to safely vote, and that they are able to cast an informed vote. And like everything in every fiber of my body is like trying to help people have enough information so that you feel like you can vote all the way down the ballot, including for the Texas Supreme Court Chief Justice, and including for the trial court judges in Bexar County, who really are the people who can either perpetuate or resolve structural racial injustice, right? I mean, that's right there in those courtrooms. Those are the people, if you care about Black Lives Matter, those are the people you need to say, I want to vote for this person because they're going to help change the system, right? So those down ballot races, it's not just the top of the ballot. The down ballot races are really important. And so we're doing everything we possibly can to make sure that you can easily find the information so you can cast an informed vote, and also find the information about how you can vote safely and get out and vote, please.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for all the work that you're doing. It's very, very important, and the community is very lucky to have such a dedicated resource.
Well, and one more time, I can't do it without the amazing interns. And if you go to NOWCASTSA and you want to see 10 years of amazing interns, we actually have an intern hall of fame that goes back 10 years. And it's pretty amazing.
What a legacy.
We have some big changes going on at the San Antonio Report. We have 4 of our 6 reporters moving to different beats, including myself. So be on the lookout for new ways that we can connect with us. We are excited to be trying to cover San Antonio in a more in-depth and different way. So look forward to sharing that with you guys later on this week.
Thank you for attending San Antonio Startup Week. A big thank you to our media panel who shared wonderful and insightful advice for our startup community here in San Antonio. To learn more about Startup Week, please visit sasw.co and join in on the conversation online using hashtag SASW2020.